Grace? I would kindly suggest you get your ass out of there now! Like, NOW now! Run, Grace! Run! 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 Run your ass off! What's up everybody, AJ here, back again with another video game review. And it's been a while since the last review video I made, and I had to review this game as it is one of my anticipated game of 2026. And I've been looking forward to this game since last year's Summer Game Fest. And that game is Resident Evil Requiem. Just a little bit of context here. Resident Evil has been one of my favorite franchises of all time, and I've been playing Resident Evil games since my teenage days. Not to mention that I've been replaying older Resident Evil games for the arrival of Resident Evil Requiem. So, after 2 playthroughs of this game, allow me to voice out my thoughts and review on Resident Evil Requiem. Resident Evil Requiem is the 9th mainline Resident Evil game, and it takes place 28 years after the Raccoon City incident that happened in Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil Requiem consists of 2 playable characters: Grace Ashcroft, an FBI analyst and daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft from Resident Evil Outbreak, and the people's beloved Leon S. Kennedy, who still works at the DSO. Grace's gameplay is basically Resident Evil 7 all over again, where resources like ammo, healing items, and defensive tools like makeshift knives are limited. Limited amount of inventory space, but has access to inventory box to store any unnecessary items. You have to go on stealth mode throughout most of the entire game to avoid any combat and engagement as much as possible. And I gotta say that in my first playthrough as Grace, there's quite a number of moments where I legit feel terrified, as there are a number of moments where I have to navigate the area without any weapon whatsoever. And just like how Resident Evil 2 Remake has Mr. X gonna give it to ya, and Resident Evil 7 has Bakers chasing you, Grace's section in Resident Evil Requiem has a creature that chases you down and cannot be defeated until you reach a certain point of the game. And that creature is called the Girl. So Grace's section is basically a full-on survival horror game.
Oh, please no.
One thing unique about Grace's section is that she has the mechanic to collect blood, and she can use those blood to craft items like handgun ammo, Molotov cocktail, and my personal favorite, the hemolytic injector. The hemolytic injector is an item that has the capability to not only instant kill an enemy, but it also prevents them from turning into Crimson Head-like creatures called blister heads. And these hemolytic injectors are only exclusive to Grace.
That's too effective.
Also, I will say this. Huge shout out to Angela St. Albano for her amazing performance as Grace. The amount of effort she put into not only voicing but acting as Grace as well is absolutely insane. Worthy of being nominated at this year's The Game Awards at least. And let's not forget the efforts of the other voice actors and mocap actors as well. Nick Apostolides, Eden Riegel, Craig Benatowski, pretty much everyone who worked on Resident Evil Requiem, so huge shout out to every single one of them. Speaking of Nick Apostolides, who is the voice actor for the one and only Leon S. Kennedy since Resident Evil 2 Remake back in 2019, let's talk about Leon's gameplay in Resident Evil Requiem.
I think I want a second opinion.
Leon's gameplay is basically Resident Evil 4 Remake all over again, where he has access to multiple weapons like shotgun, machine gun, and sniper rifle. And these weapons can be upgraded as well by spending currencies which can be obtained by defeating enemies, or by getting an item called a tracking module with different rarity. His inventory is basically the attaché case, where he has larger inventory space, but in exchange of not having access to the inventory box, just like in Resident Evil 4. He uses an axe or a hatchet instead of a knife that has a durability bar as well, just like the knife in Resident Evil 4, but you have to sharpen the axe when the durability bar of the axe that requires 0 resources in order for the durability to fully recover. And yes, Leon can parry using the hatchet as well. And let's not forget that defeated enemies drop items like ammo, green herbs, med injectors, and scraps. It's literally Resident Evil 4 all over again. Leon also has a hidden mechanic where he has a special kill animation when the enemies get too close or the enemy is in a staggered state. One thing about Leon's gameplay is that his combat feels more grounded compared to Resident Evil 4, probably because of the fact that he's in his 50s, but every time he goes in for the kill, it gives you the most satisfying feel possible. Not to mention that if you're sick of tired of facing enemy wielding chainsaws back in Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil 6, well, guess what? Leon has the capability of using chainsaws on multiple occasions. There's even a moment in the game where Leon has a chainsaw duel with another enemy that wields a chainsaw as well, which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a video game in my entire life. And one thing I have to highlight is some of you all miss Leon's cheesy one-liners just like he had in the original Resident Evil 4 game. Well, guess what? He has them over here in this game as well.
Sorry, but I'm not on the menu.
Overall, Resident Evil Requiem has the perfect balance of horror and action as you're playing as Grace throughout the first half of the game, with a little snippets of Leon on the way, while in the second half of the game, you're playing as Leon with wee bits of Grace. And both characters can be played in either first-person perspective or third-person perspective, where Grace is first-person by default, while Leon is third-person by default. And you can change perspective on the fly as well, which I think is never done in any other Resident Evil game. So having the capability to switch perspective on the fly is a really nice touch. And of course, it ain't a Resident Evil game without boss fights where, spoiler alert, Grace has to deal with the girl that she has to deal with since the start of the game, while Leon has to deal with a lot of nostalgia bosses like, once again, spoilers alert, a gigantic spider from OG Resident Evil 1 and 2, Mr. X gonna give it to you, a gigantic plan, and a certain returning commander.
Backup is on the way.
Not necessary. I'll neutralize the target myself.
But one thing I wanna highlight about one of the boss fight is that there is one moment where Mr. X ended up on the other side of the area and he was constantly trying to charge at me, and no matter how many bullets I throw at him, there's no reaction from him at all. I'm not sure if it's a bug that's in the game, so I ended up restarting the game to restart the boss fight, and I hope that Capcom fixes this issue as soon as possible. And since I mentioned about the game's bosses, let me talk a wee bit about the zombies in this game as well. Unlike the zombies in older Resident Evil games where they just mindlessly come after a living human, these zombies on the other hand have unique behavior where they still retain pieces of who they were before they turn into a zombie. You have zombies that their duty is to turn the lights off at night so that you can exploit that as Grace while navigating the Rhodes Hill Care Center. You have zombies that used to be a songstress where every time they scream, it puts Grace into a stun state for a certain period of time. And as I mentioned earlier, killing a zombie in this game doesn't mean that they're completely gone, as there's a chance that they can come back as a more ferocious creature called Blister Heads. Just like the zombies in Resident Evil 1 Remake, where after a certain time when they get incapacitated, there's a chance that they'll turn into a more ferocious zombie called Crimson Heads unless you either burn the bodies or blow their heads off. So the same concept applies to these zombies as well, where unless you inject them with a hemolytic injector or blow their heads off, these zombies have a chance to come back as a more ferocious creature, which are more harder to deal with than normal zombies.
Well, that's my cardio for the week.
All in all, I really enjoyed Gray's session of the game as you really have to think twice on literally everything. Resource management, enemy encounters, puzzle solving, and strategically planning on where to go to proceed the game. Leon's session on the other hand, even though I enjoy it to some extent, there are some aspects of Leon's session that I do have to criticize. First of all, the handguns. I noticed that as I keep progressing the game, the handgun is not really that useful regardless of how much you upgrade it, as trying to headshot an enemy in this game to stagger them to perform a melee attack is harder compared to Resident Evil 4. And not to mention that, unless Leon is equipped with a body armor, these zombies, when they hit you with objects, they hit you like a brick. So I had to resort to other weapons like the shotgun, the machine gun, and the sniper in order to take down these zombies as fast as possible. And if there's a moment where if I can kill a zombie, I will take that opportunity without a shadow of a doubt. So I just wish that the handgun is useful even in late game, where one shot to the face staggers them or stuns them so that Leon can approach them and perform a melee attack just like in Resident Evil 4. Otherwise, I just don't see any reason for me to keep the handgun in my inventory. Secondly, the level design at Raccoon City. Well, I do find it that exploring the remains of Raccoon City can be interesting, but unfortunately it also can be confusing at times as well, especially while searching for parts of the detonator, to the extent that I had to constantly open the map most of the entire time to figure out where do I go next at the remains of Raccoon City. But one thing that I really enjoyed during Leon's segment is him revisiting the Raccoon Police Department. It's nostalgia overload. I wish I could talk about them, but unfortunately those segments are spoilers, and I think it's best that you see them with your own eyes instead of me talking about the section in Raccoon Police Department.
Sherry, I'm in RPD.
It's been a while since you've been back there.
Speaking of spoilers, there's another thing that I do want to criticize, and a spoiler that I don't mind talking about as a matter of fact, and that is regarding one of the villains in this game. Yes, you heard me right. Victor Gideon is not only the villain in this game, there is another villain that appears in the game as well. And that is, spoiler alert, Zeno, aka Timo Wesker.
I've been waiting for you, Grace.
I was hoping that Zeno will play a more vital role in this game, as he had one of the biggest reviews ever or he could be the final boss of the game, but he ended up getting his head chopped off by Victor after using Elpis on himself and realizing that Elpis is actually an antiviral. So I kinda expected more from Xeno, as Capcom presented him like he's a big deal, but he ended up being underused instead. And one last thing that I do wanna criticize on, and that is the ending of this game. First of all, I do not acknowledge the existence of the bad ending of this game, because to me, Resident Evil has already established themselves as a game that kinda has an ongoing story. If it's a situation like Silent Hill and Fatal Frame, where each of these games have their own independent story and has little to no connection with the previous games, sure, you can have multiple endings. But if it's a series like Resident Evil that has a follow-up or a continuation of a story from previous games, I just don't see any reason for Capcom to put multiple endings in a Resident Evil game. Regardless of how people think of how the bad ending could have been improved in any shape or form possible, I just don't acknowledge the existence of the bad ending. I just don't. I did say that Leon might die in this game in the most heroic way possible, just like how Tony Stark sacrifices himself in Revenge Endgame and at some point, and I really hope I was wrong. But the fact that Sherry appears in this game and she also has the same illness as Leon has, that's the moment I know that Leon is staying alive at the end of the game. He has to. Because here's the thing that not many people think about. If Leon dies, then Sherry dies as well. On another note, I was kinda bummed out of the fact that Victor is the boss fight instead of Xeno. And not gonna lie, I got kinda confused during the second phase of the boss fight, where did Victor turn into a Nemesis creature? Or did Victor die and somehow a Nemesis creature appears from the underground? But other than that, I'm pretty satisfied with how the good ending is presented, where Leon has been fully cured of his illness, which is the Raccoon City syndrome, I believe, and he has an antiviral, which is the Elpis, saved for Sherry as well. And let's not forget about the replayability challenges that this game has to offer as well, where the game has a harder difficulty, New Game Plus modes, challenges to obtain in-game points where I can unlock stuff like cosmetics, concept arts, in-game models, special weapons, and unlimited ammo as well, which you might need on the hardest difficulty of the game. All in all, Resident Evil Requiem is definitely one of the best Resident Evil game Capcom has to offer. Grace being the new character in the franchise is a really nice touch, and I'm personally okay with Grace, as a matter of fact, as she starts off as this person who has anxiety and has to go through this nightmare of dealing with a horde of zombies and a giant creature that kinda constantly haunts her. But as the game progresses, she gets more character development as she has to do the thing that she feels right so that she doesn't have any more regrets. Leon coming back in the main timeline since Resident Evil 6 is really nice, being the badass that he is even though he's in his 50s, and his one-liners as his way of coping his PTSD is back as well. And I think bringing back Leon after his popularity spike in Resident Evil 4 Remake was the right decision, and him going back to Raccoon City where everything began is a really nice touch. And it's nice to see Sherry back as well, as a matter of fact, since Resident Evil 6, and serving as a Leon's navigator to top it off. But I do kinda wish that Claire and Ada is being mentioned at the very least in this game, because both Claire and Ada were part of the Raccoon City survivors as well, along with Jill. And once again, huge shout out to the voice actors, the mocap actors, and the staff who work on this game. Angela, Nick, Eden, Craig, Nakanishi-san, to every single one of the staff who work on this game, kudos to each and every one of you all. Overall, Resident Evil Requiem gets a 9 out of 10 from me, and I do highly recommend you all to try this game out. And I do understand that there are people out there who are reluctant to pay this game at full price, which is $70, for a 10 to 15 hour game on a single run. So for those of you who are a one and dine kind of people, you might want to wait for sales to get this game. But personally, $70 for a 10 to 15 hour game that has a very good replayability value. And as of this video being recorded, I'm on my third playthrough, as a matter of fact, as I'm trying to beat one of the challenges where I have to beat the game within 4 hours. So as someone who enjoys Resident Evil as a whole, paying $70 is completely worth it. And that's my review and thoughts on Resident Evil Requiem. For those of you who have beaten the game, feel free to leave a comment down below to voice your thoughts and gripes on the game. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more videos, so feel free to hit the subscribe button down below and hit that bell notification so that you will be notified when I will drop my next video. Until then, my name is AJ, hope you all have a good one, and I will see you all in the next video.
Leon, gotta go. Catch up soon.
Oh, Emily's alive. Thank goodness.
Fighting the darkness, holding me.